Well, welcome everybody. This is Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, author of the book, A Life to Die For. And today, apparently, I am very magnanimous and magnificent, and I'm really enjoying that aspect of myself. And today, my partner, Stephanie. Stephanie, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do and all that, and let's get going.
I am joining you in magnificence and magnanimousness and inviting our listeners to join us in this as well. What would that be like if we all really just stepped into the fullness of our magnificence and explored it today? You wanted me to tell you a little bit about me. Purpose, the topic of our conversation today, is something that I very much do with my clients, or explore, I should say, with my clients who are coaches, healers, spiritual and purpose-driven entrepreneurs. And that what we do together is explore the purpose that they'd like to bring into the world, what they'd like to create, that big thing within them that's just like bursting and wants to come out. What does that look like? And how do they do it in a way that's completely aligned with who they are, what they believe in, and how they'd like to live? And then how do you communicate that to the people you're here to serve? So that's kind of what I do professionally. Otherwise, I'm really here for joyful creation in general and specifically, and to have fun.
Yeah, having fun, that's a pretty important aspect of life. And I don't know, a lot of people probably will agree that the last few months have not been terribly fun for most people. And it's been difficult to keep our joy levels high enough in the face of all the things that are going on in our world. So maybe today we can help to connect back into that sense of joy and bring it more fully into our presence, into this moment. And as you said, Stephanie, I just want to mention to folks, normally we have a third person here with us, Nancy Stevens. Just had a weird, as they say in the old age homes, a brain fart. Anyway, but Nancy is normally here with us, and she is away right now because she was planning vacation and stuff got messed up. So she's ending up in a place where she can't be online with us. And that's what happened. But she will certainly be back and join us next time. But anyway, our topic today, as Stephanie mentioned, is about purpose. And in specific, we're talking about finding your purpose without losing yourself. And I think Stephanie kind of alluded to that when she talked about staying connected to who you really are. I think that's very, very important. And that's really what we are all about in this whole soul empowerment series of programs that we do. So with that said, Stephanie, why don't we talk a little bit? I know that we had a huge list of things we want to talk about. We wanted to talk about things like the myths of purpose and how the search for purpose and the pursuit of happiness are related and all these kinds of stuff. What seems to be calling to you right now as a starting point?
Well, what occurred to me as you were talking, David, is this. A lot of times I think, at least I'll speak for myself, I have been very confused throughout much of my life about what is my purpose, because of a lot of the conditioned thinking and messages that I had from parents, from authority figures, and all of these turned into shoulds in my mind, things that I think I should do, and also a desire to feel loved, and misunderstanding that my purpose is to help others in order to get that love. And this is something that has been quite a while unraveling. And I still see this so very often because I'm working so often with, I don't even like the word working, I'm creating and work/playing with entrepreneurs who have who've experienced a spiritual calling, or who they're very purpose driven, and often they confuse a sense of obligation or duty with purpose, or what they think they're supposed to do.
Right.
Oh, may I share something that I just got this week around this, David, that just came to me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt myself here for a moment. As you're watching and listening, we very much invite you to participate. So if you have questions about purpose, is there something in particular, like what intention do you have for yourself in this discussion today? Would you like to get clear about your own purpose? Would you like to see something new? Feel free to put in the chat, and we will do our best to come around to that too. So I have been saying for a while, because I see so many beautiful souls who have this desire to change the world, who get very weighed down by the idea of, oh, I have to fulfill my purpose or else I'm shirking my duty or I'm not fulfilling my destiny. And it gets heavy and it really lacks joy. So I've been inviting my client playmates for a while to come back to joyful creation. Like, what if it's all about what you desire and it bubbles up and overflows into the world? This is how I believe we are really designed to live, like by actually creating joy for ourselves first, which naturally, when it's truly true joy, it is going to be good for everyone. And I always thought of it like that, like it bubbles up and overflows into the world. And that's how I give, by filling my cup first to overflow. And I heard, it was a quote by Sid Banks earlier last week. And he said, create your joy. And when it overflows, give it back to yourself.
Nice.
And I never thought of that before. I said, oh my goodness, I could give it back to myself. And then it just, and I've been getting something, because even though I've stopped feeling obligated to sacrifice myself for the world like I did for a long time, I still had this little belief that, yes, I'm going to be joyful, but I'm still I still couldn't really imagine something that really was just about me. But that's the funny thing. It's never just about me, right? Like it can't be. It can't be. Am I making sense? Like, what's coming up for you in this? Because I'm feeling at a loss for words for part of what I've seen.
Well, you're making great sense to me. It all makes beautiful sense. There's about 2 or 3 points in there that I would like to talk about. The first is at the beginning of your presentation portion, you were talking about how life seems to be full of shoulds and musts and gottas and so forth like that. And in fact, many of us are brought up that way, where we're supposed to go to school, we're supposed to get an education, we're supposed to go to university, we're supposed to get a degree, and we're supposed to all do this when we're still too young to really know what it is we truly are meant to do. We haven't quite figured it out yet. We haven't matured in our physical nature yet. And so we're trying to figure things out. We as adults don't give our kids an opportunity to make the kinds of mistakes they need to make in order to be able to figure out what's right for them. Instead, we insist that they go to school, that they choose a degree by the time they're 20 years old, and basically, choose a life path, even though it may not be at all aligned with who they really are. How many parents want their kids to be doctors and lawyers and things like that when the kid just wants to be, a ballerina or an artist or a fireman, for all I know? This is the thing. We don't really give our kids a chance to develop that on their own. The next thing that you mentioned, which I thought was really important, was this idea of people want to change the world. And I thought it was really interesting that you chose that phrase. I mean, I just did a podcast about that very topic. My podcast this week was called Change the World, ? And I actually talk about that in a lot of detail. What is it that makes us want to change the world when the reality is what we really need to do is go within? And so now that brings us back to the point you were talking about at the end, which is when you go within, then you discover the essence of who you really are. You discover the truth of who you are. You discover the love that's within that, and you begin to bring that forward. And what happens is it overflows. Now, you call it joy. I call it love. It's the same thing to me. And when it overflows and you bring it into the world just has to change. It's not about going out there and fixing the world. It's about going in here and allowing yourself to fully express. I think that's what we're talking about here. And so true purpose, true mission, if you like, has to come from in here. It can't come from up here.
Yeah. What do you find when you go within, David? Like, what have you discovered when you go within about your purpose?
That's a great question. And I've actually, I've developed a few processes to help people with that very question. And I have a very, very simple process that I teach people. It's basically called the repeated question game. And I think I might have shared this with you before. It works best with a partner. Anybody will do. You're going to take turns. But the idea is one person is going to be the interviewer and the other one is going to be the responder. But the interviewer has a very, very simple job. The interviewer asks one question. And that one question is, who are you? And then the responder answers with whatever seems to be true in the moment of hearing that question. So you might say to me, who are you? And I might say, oh, I'm David. And you will say, this is the way it works really well. You say, oh, thank you. Who are you? And what you will do is you might change your inflection or you might put emphasis on different words in the sentence and whatever. Or you might lean forward with your eyes open and say, who are you? And each different mechanism that you use triggers a different kind of response. And what I have noticed whenever I have done this is I peel away the David, the I am a man, the I am a pilot, the I am a poet, I'm a musician, I'm an aerobics instructor, I'm a software engineer. All those things fall away, and I realize none of those things is who I am. And eventually, as I keep doing this, I come down to the truth that who I am is a magnificent, divine, unlimited spiritual being of light and love who happens to be sharing a common human experience with a lot of other similar beings. That's what I know about myself. And when I stay connected to that, then all the rest of it is just experiences, tiny little individual experiences that I have as a result of who I am. But they do not specify who I am. And even if you add up all the experiences that I appear to have had, that still isn't who I am. Because I am the one creating those experiences. So that's what I know. And so now to get to your second part of your question is, how does that influence my purpose? What I understand is, okay, if I now understand who I really am, then my purpose must have something to do with honestly and truthfully and unapologetically expressing that truth about who I am and encouraging everyone else to do the same thing. And that's really what my purpose is. That's what I do now.
Yeah. Because this is a question that so often comes up in my world, I like to let it be very simple and explore it from that place. Well, what would you like for it to be? What do you think it might be? If we were going to pretend that you knew what your purpose was, what would you know? And recognize that we kind of are always already connected to it, living it, doing it in those moments when we're not thinking about it, when we're not obsessing about it. And here too, I feel like it's useful to point out that a lot of times we think of our purpose as what we do in the world. But if my purpose is to be a doctor or a coach or a fireman or a musician or a poet, then does that mean I have no purpose in those moments when I'm not doing it, when I'm asleep, when I'm sick, when I've retired, when I'm physically unable to do the things that I could no longer do? I don't believe that's the case. So something about purpose to me is also, it's almost like, yes, we're all this I might say the stuff of the universe living through us. You were saying a divine essence that is experienced in this form we might call David. There's kind of a flavor. There's a unique David flavor, right? Like I've grown to know it a little bit more. Like, what is David flavored universal divinity? You know, what is Stephanie flavored? And it changes, right? Like it's not just one fixed thing, but
Right.
it's more than our memories or our beliefs or the thoughts that may or may not be in our space or the sum of our experiences. It's actually like a signature, almost like there's a flavor to it, not fixed,
Right.
more
Yeah.
like a thread or an essence. And it seems to me that being that and dropping all the crap that keeps us from being that is more close to our purpose. And how could we be anything but that? We just have a ton of thinking that confuses us about it.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. I like the idea of flavors. I have heard it before, but it didn't quite hit me until the way you said it. I like the way you said it. But it kind of reminds me, there's another analogy that I have heard that also resonates for me, and maybe this will work for you too. If you imagine, you know, somebody takes a cup, a measuring cup, and scoops out a cup of water out of the ocean. And then that same person takes another cup from a different part of the ocean, over here somewhere, and now we have 2 cups of water. And they look pretty much the same, but clearly because they're taken from 2 different parts of the ocean, they're not 100% the same. So one of them is David and one of them is Stephanie. And these are 2 cups of water that have a brief existence in this form. And here's what's interesting. If you take those 2 cups of water and at some point in time, put one of them back and then the other one back, I guarantee you will never be able to go with that cup and scoop out a David or a Stephanie ever again. Because somehow the waters are going to mix. You and I may somehow, our energies will come together in some way. And so the next time a cup is taken out, it might have a little combination of both of us, plus everything else that's in the ocean. That is a beautiful metaphor for me that really describes the temporary existence of spiritual energy in physical form. And I just love it. I don't know, it gives me great comfort. And so my purpose in that cup is to do everything I can to experience all aspects of my essence in that cup and to help all other cups around the world fully experience and express themselves too. And to remember that they're not really the cup, but they're the stuff inside the cup. That's what I try to do.
Cool. I have a question for the people who are listening and watching live now. I'm curious, and you don't have to say anything more about it unless you'd like to, but I'm curious, do you know your purpose? Do you think that you know your purpose? And if you do, or if you don't, I would love for you to answer in the chat. I'm just very curious about it, to see where we land. I can come up with words to express my purpose. I have a sense of it. And also it feels like it may be different in any given moment. There's probably a theme, like there's that flavor. But it doesn't seem like any one thing to do or be. There are many things, like you said, experiencing all the different aspects of being this cup we're calling Stephanie. There are lots of things that I get to experience. And also there's something in that, yes, experience what's there. And also there's something that I also feel like there's a co-creation in it, that I also get to choose which parts of that experience of me I'd like to amplify or focus on or play with a little bit more than others.
Right.
There's an interesting comment from Doreen, whose purpose seems to have shifted during the pandemic. And that's really interesting, right? I think that's not uncommon. This has been this experience of the past few months and the disruption societally, culturally, however, personally, professionally, has presented an opportunity and possible wake-up call for many people, like, oh, what am I choosing now? And that's what I mean by, like, a purpose is, it's not written in stone, it doesn't seem to me. I don't believe that. It's as organic and evolving as we are. I recognized just this morning that something that I was headed in one direction last week, which seemed pretty clear this week, oh, nope, I'm not doing that now. Very interesting. I could make up reasons about it, but it's like the flow has changed. So
Right.
you had talked about feeling a shift in your own purpose, right, David, of late? And
Well, not so much my purpose. You see, this is the thing. I think sometimes people misunderstand what the word purpose really means. When I talk about purpose, I'm talking about life purpose, which means really to me why I'm here. What am I here to do? It's not about whether I, invent a new product, or whether I heal people as a doctor, or it doesn't matter the mechanism or the specific thing I do. What matters is my ultimate purpose for my whole life. And the way I envision this, I see it as two parts. First, I have a vision for the kind of world I want to live in. And my vision of the world I want to live in is people living together in peace and harmony. I'm sure everybody wants that sort of thing. Okay? But how do I create that? How do I create that world that I want to live in? Because other people have different ideas about how to create that kind of world. So I'm gonna unfortunately run into conflict with people who don't see my way of creating an ideal world as moral or acceptable or just, and they're going to think their way is better. See, so the problem is we have to find the truth of who we are and let that inform our purpose for being. So I am now, because of the work I have done, I am able to articulate my purpose in only 11 words. And it's not, okay, I'll say it actually. I'll say it this way. I write my purpose this way. I create universal harmony by modeling, fostering, and facilitating authentic magnificence. Now, that sounds lofty. I know it does. And you may judge it however you choose. That's your business. I know for me, however, it's a resonating force. It's obviously not something that's going to happen in my lifetime. It's just way too big, right? But what it does is it creates for me a kind of a beacon that stands out here. And I can look to that beacon and say, all right, anything I think, say, do, or feel has to align with that beacon. Otherwise, I'm out of alignment with my purpose. I'm out of integrity with who I really am. That's how I view it. So when I think about my purpose, I create universal harmony by modeling, fostering, and facilitating authentic magnificence. And then I look at, all right, what do I want to do? I want to do a podcast. Well, is that in alignment with my purpose? And I check, and I verify with myself. Yeah, it seems to be in alignment. It definitely feels like I'm pointing in the right direction. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Right? That's how I use my purpose. That's how I use that statement. It isn't meant to be something that I ever hope to accomplish in a single lifetime. So that's how I see it. And, when I work with people on mission, that's exactly, I call it mission or purpose, whatever. That's what I do. I say, all right, think about the world you want to live in. Create this vision for your world. Describe it in as much detail as you can. And then once you've got that kind of figured out, then look to yourself and say, who am I? What kind of a person am I? And what kind of action would I to be consistent with who I am in order to bring that vision into reality? Now, what you end up with when you do that is 2 or 3 paragraphs or pages or, reams of information. And the idea is to whittle it down, whittle it down, whittle it down, whittle it down until you have a single sentence that you can remember just like that. That's how I work with people on purpose.
Mm-hmm. I heard you say something else, David. I heard you say another purpose, or it sounds like a purpose, what might be a purpose, which was when you were talking to like purpose of existence. It was something like, and I am paraphrasing, when you were talking about the nature of who we are, all being part of that ocean in that metaphor. It was like I heard you say, paraphrasing again, my purpose is to remind people of what they really are, or to wake people up. That feels right for me, knowing you, in the, again, like the flavor of David, to wake people up to who they really are, to wake people up to what they're really here to do and what it is to be them. Perhaps another way of saying that same purpose statement. Yeah, I'm wondering, because I don't feel I have a purpose statement. I went through a purpose mapping journey. I think I talked about it with you once. It was like a 6-month journey with a coach where we took all of these things, including 360 feedback from people who know me, clients, loved ones, friends, to get both the essence. We distilled it down of my gifts, my genius, and also the shadow and how it displays, and went through kind of a Jungian hero's journey of, going into the cave you fear to enter and finding the shadow and going beyond the shadow to the gold that lies beyond it. And it was really fun. And so I have this purpose statement, which has evolved and changed slightly over time and means something very much to me. And yet I don't use it consciously, because for me, I find that it's alive. It feels more alive. And in exploring it with people, because there's often so much seriousness and weight put on it, I actually spend more time lightening it, letting it be more playful, letting it be a joyful expression. And do we even need to have it? What if we don't? Like playing with that as well and noticing what comes from it. My journey has kind of moved from being very, very systems and process and rules driven to going very much the opposite direction and being very spontaneous and flowing, and now moving back to more of a middle path, which is being fluid and flexible and responsive to the moment and what's emerging without having an agenda, but returning to some sense of focus or intention for what I'd like to create. And that is as much of a purpose as anything. Is what I'm finding in the moment. So it very much depends. For some people, I think having a very specific purpose statement and being very clear about it is exactly what they need. And for other people, maybe it's more letting themselves off the hook for a while or forever. Like, my purpose is to be. How would I like to be in this moment and this moment and this moment?
Right. That's absolutely correct. I think that no one of us can judge anyone else for the kind of purpose they have or the way they show up. We don't know their true purpose for being. So that's something that we have to remember. Okay. Now, you mentioned about feedback, and there's something I want to say about feedback. I think we have to take feedback with a grain of salt, because all feedback is about the person giving it. It is not about the person receiving it. right? No matter what I say to you, however true it might be for you, it is still my judgment, my interpretation, my projection, and my story. That is the fact of life. And there's nothing that can change that. So if I say to you, I see you as a magnificent being, that is just my judgment. I could be completely wrong, but I see that in you because this is the way you appear to me. You see? But it's still my projection. And I think what we need to do is when we receive feedback is to be fair to the other person, say, thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate that you've shared that with me. And that's all you need to do. We should never disagree with feedback. We shouldn't argue with it. We shouldn't agree with it either. Just simply say, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate your willingness to share your perspective. And if you wish, you can add one more thing and say something like, I hear that you have some suggestions about how I might show up, and I appreciate that too. I will take them under advisement. That's it. You're done. So feedback is useful, and I think we do all need some feedback, at least to get some sense of how we're showing up in the world, how we think other people are seeing us, and then to make adjustments if we want to. But I don't think feedback should ever direct anyone's purpose. That's what I'm concerned about. My purpose is something that has to come from in here. It might be helpful to me to hear your perspective about the gifts that you think I have. That might be helpful. And I might say, oh yeah, I can resonate with that. I know I do have that gift, and I forgot about it, but thank you for reminding me. But you might also say something that doesn't resonate at all, and that could just confuse me. You see? So we have to be really, really careful about this idea of feedback and let the purpose, the true thing that we're supposed to be doing come from in here. Because then there is no doubt. It can't come from up here because most of this comes from out there. So it has to come from in here, which is where your true source of wisdom and knowledge and brilliance comes from.
Yes, I find that to be, even when I'm exploring purpose and what people would like to create and what that might look like in the world with people, sometimes I have my own opinions or judgments about what I see in that person.
Of course you do.
And I might share that as appropriate. Like, here's what I see. Here's my sense of it. Here's what I'm getting. What do you think? What's resonant for you? And I let them tell me what their experience is, what their sense of it is, because I have a very powerful belief that, for one, it doesn't really matter what I say or anyone else. It matters what they know to be true in this moment, what's true for them, what's happening within them, what they would like to create. And that's more important than being right. So, it can be so helpful to have someone as a guide to help tease it out of you and reflect things for you and bounce things around. But it doesn't come from them. You're right. It doesn't come from anything external.
Right. So all right, I'm about to give you some feedback.
Please do.
What I notice when you speak, I observe that you use language in a way that when you communicate your message to me or to anybody else, I'm assuming it's to anybody else, but just the way you speak. First, you take full ownership that it is about you. You express that in the words that you choose. For example, you said, what I see is, and then you follow it with, what do you think? I think that's beautiful. What you're doing is you're taking full ownership of your perspective. And that is something that everybody, everybody should learn how to talk like that. It is what I call empowered communication, and I would love to do a whole course on that with you here, because I think it is something that people need to learn. So now that I've brought it up, maybe we can talk about it later. But you see that's something that I notice about you, and I really resonate with that. Here's the beauty of it. When you say, what I see is, I immediately relax because I know that you know that it's your perspective. And I don't have to say, no, you're wrong about that. You see, if you eliminated the what I see is and follow it with, you do this, I immediately go into defensive mode. Do you see? But your purpose, your mechanism takes that whole energy away and allows me to simply hear what you have to say about what you see. And I no longer take it personally. It's beautiful. And that's my judgment.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David. I'm receiving that. It's what's interesting is that it doesn't come from a technique. It comes from, that's actually how I see things. I see that, wow, we are all creating. And this is interesting, right? Because we were talking about changing the world. When we change ourselves, we are changing the world because we live in our own world. And I'm recognizing, like, I have this world that's the Stephanie bubble in a certain sense. And I really don't think that that's right. It's just how it looks to me. And I'm really curious about how it looks to other people and helping them recognize more clearly how it does look for them and what works for them in that world and what's holding them back in that world. And that has nothing to do with me and my judgments about what the world should be. So it's really just an outflow of the way the world looks to me. And I think that's why it's so powerful that when we have an insight about ourselves, the world, the nature of reality, thought, perhaps, it can wake us up in a way that is far beyond any intellectual knowledge, because all of a sudden it's like we open our eyes and we're in a different world, and so everything changes. It's a domino effect. It's profound. It's beyond, years ago when I learned nonviolent communication as a strategy to talk with someone and connect with them more deeply and not have conflict, I was using it as a strategy. And now it's sort of like, I just see, I don't know when it happened. I can't point to it exactly, but I see the world differently. And I see the world from a place of, hey, this is how it looks to me. What do you think? How does it look to you? What do we share in common and what's different? And what can I learn from that?
I was just noticing some noise. I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from.
I'm not hearing any. Yeah.
Sounds like somebody's got some dishes or something moving around.
That may be in the background for me. It's not loud on my microphone, but it could be picking it up. If it's a problem, let me know. I'll mute and you can talk for a while. No,
it's okay. I just trying to figure out where it was coming from. I just looking at all the microphones. Anyway, the whole idea of taking ownership and understanding that we can communicate beautifully if we all choose to do so. I think part of the problem is we've become lazy and we have become complacent about, just mutually judging each other back and forth. And it happens so often. In fact, if you look at social media, it's become like almost a pandemic of its own. And I find that rather disturbing, actually, that people are not willing to own their own judgments or their own projections and to understand that what they're talking about is their opinion and it's not fact. I mean, it might be fact, but more often than not, it's just an opinion about something that's going on. And as a result, we end up with people arguing about all kinds of stuff, and it detracts from what I think is really what we're here for, and that is to support each other and to love each other and to help each other grow into the biggest and most beautiful and most magnificent beings we can be. Ultimately, I think that's what we should all be doing, right? I just use a should in there, by the way. But that's what I believe. That's something that I think all of us really, truly would like to do. And we can't do that unless we get down to the truth of who we really are. We ourselves. If I believe, I'm just all my thoughts and my roles and But if I can get past that and get down to the truth of who I am, to that real essence, that spiritual, beautiful being, then I can begin to see that everyone else is like that too. And that helps to eliminate these problems that we're having with communication issues and one person's mission overriding another person's mission and all that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of what I notice.
There was something in what you said that I just wanted to come back to for a moment. Because I think it is so natural for us to forget that how the world looks to us is not how it looks to other people.
Right.
Because it feels really scary to think that we've got it wrong or we don't know what's happening. Like it makes us feel safe, even when it's an ugly world that we believe we're in, where awful things are happening. So I would like to suggest, because it helps me personally have compassion, that it really isn't laziness or complacency, but fear and a feeling of uncertainty and just not honestly knowing that there's another way to go about this that keeps us from doing it. Because I believe that if we did know, when we do know that there's another way to be that would work for us better, we'll choose it. We just don't get it. We don't really get it. It still makes sense to us to judge other people and blame other people and make ourselves into a victim because for whatever reasons, right? It just really looks like that's how it is. And that's the best way to keep myself safe and happy, perhaps. And when it looks different, I'll choose differently. And I can say this for myself because, wow, my behavior has changed radically in the course of my life based on what looked true to me.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's part of the growth process, isn't it? The more experience you have, the more I think you have different perspectives. I mean, I've probably done 180-degree shifts in my life, and I'm sure you have too. And that's part of the process, I think, of getting clearer and clearer and clearer in each moment about who you are, so that you can be clearer and clearer and clearer in each moment about why you are here. So, maybe now would be a good time to start talking about some of the myths of purpose that lead people into being stuck. So, I guess one myth that I have is that I'm aware of is that a purpose is kind of got to be something that you have to do, and that if you don't do it, then you're a failure. Why don't we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's something that drove me for a long time. I believed that, because I grew up with a very Christian upbringing for a long time, that God had given me a purpose and I had no choice but to follow it if I was going to be a good Christian, a good person, true to myself, true to what I was here to do. And it felt horrible. That was not a fun purpose. That was not joyful. It felt like something that was inflicted upon me, instead of something that I was choosing.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed a lot. That changed dramatically when I realized it can be what I'd like for it to be. It could be just being me, however that appears to me, and however it grows and changes. That was very liberating. I think that, what is another myth of purpose that I see? I think there's that confusion we talked about earlier about that it's something you do.
Right.
That's what most people are talking about. I just need to find my purpose. And then if I find my purpose, everything is going to be okay. Because then I'll know what I should be doing. Like, purpose is not about getting it right or wrong. What if you can't get it wrong? What if you can't get your purpose wrong? Like, just what if?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And I think that you've hit on something very important here. What you do is really actions that you take that are probably influenced by some process that you have. For example, setting goals. And really often, if you set goals, if you have a particular goal in mind, and I don't know, something like, let's say it's just to build a house, something simple like that. Well, there are certain steps you have to take in order to build a house, right? And so I suppose technically you could get it wrong. You could get the house building wrong if you do things in the wrong order, or if you forget something, like you have to have certain permits and all the rest of that. If you forget something, then you may have to backtrack and repair things. But really, that is not the same as a purpose. A goal is merely something that you do that hopefully is in alignment with your purpose. And if what you're doing in life is aligned with who you are, then it's just naturally everything is going to fall into that line. And so you may end up building a house and you may make a mistake about it, but so what? You're learning, you're growing, you're developing, and you're moving forward in your life. You might do other things that are even could even create more unpleasant circumstances for yourself or for other people. I mean, who among us has not done something that we absolutely regret in terms of dealing with other people? I mean, I sure have. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've done some really bad things in my life. And I at the time that I did them, to Stephanie's point, at the time that I did them, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And how often have I gone back and looked and I said, oh my God, I can't believe I actually did that. That definitely was not aligned with who I am today and with my understanding of my true essence. All right, is it too late to fix it? Well, not if that person or the situation is such that people are still alive and you can go and apologize, make amends, do anything you can to correct it. Now, they may not want to hear from you, but if your heart is intended towards that healing, then healing will happen one way or another. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Purpose and goals are very different.
You can do anything with your purpose. So if your purpose is to, for example, bring love into the world or be love in the world, you can build a house with love. You can have a business with love. You can go to the grocery store with love. You can even navigate a conflict or a difficult situation with love. You can do anything with that purpose.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah. And in fact, I believe that at the deepest level, everything that we think, say, do, or feel is motivated by a desire to give or receive love. It may not look that way from the outside. It may look quite dysfunctional. But even the people who are the most violent in this world, I believe, are in their own dysfunctional way, either trying to get love for themselves or they're in some strange way trying to give love. They may have a completely skewed understanding of what love is, but I believe that's what they're motivated by. And so what we need to do is get people, you talked about shadow earlier, and very much of the time when people are behaving in this dysfunctional way, it's because of shadow behaviors underneath that are driven by dysfunctional beliefs. And that's something that takes a long time to understand. Talk about peeling the onion.
So I'd like to pose this question, David, because I'm imagining that some of the people who've tuned in probably have this question, like, how can I find my purpose? You already mentioned that conversation that you like to have with the people you're helping. And I'll give another idea, like, how do I find my purpose? If you give yourself permission to engage with this creatively, one of the ways to discover something is to think about 3 people you really admire and write their names down. What do you admire about them? What do you love about them? What traits do they have? What do they do that you really admire? And then, do that without thinking about it too deeply. And you can come back to that. And inevitably, those will be what's sometimes called your golden shadow. Like those are
Exactly.
the traits within yourself that are aspirational. You don't really acknowledge them, but you're growing into them. You're moving in that direction, or you'd like to. And that's kind of an indication of your purpose. You would probably like to be like that. And the things they're doing, is there some sizzling in the background, David? And I apologize if it's quite distracting. It's
Yeah.
not as loud. I'll finish what I'm saying and then mute myself. I'm going to have a very delicious meal after this, I think. I suspect. So that's a clue that can clue you into the direction to go. And then what if you come up with one small way you can test that out? What if you try it? What would you like to create with it?
Exactly. Exactly. And, I think that you brought up the idea of looking at qualities in people that you really admire. And I'm glad that you mentioned the golden shadow, because that's precisely what it is. When I see something in someone else that I like, it's because it really resides in here somewhere, and I have myself that I'd like to bring more into the fore. But in the same vein, you can also look at what you don't like about either a person or a situation. And you can look at, there's plenty of things in the world that I'm not crazy about. And I could come up with a very long list of things I don't like. And then the question that I would ask myself is, all right, how can I bring love to all of these situations and find a way to heal them? Even if all I can come up with is just to meditate on them and allow the energy of love to surround all those things. That might be enough. But if you can come to that place of understanding that you have the power to bring love to any situation, you can do it. And if you allow yourself to bring that energy into everything you do, before you know it, love is going to be showing up everywhere you go. And that is the beauty of this process. So you can look at all the things that you love about a person or about a situation. Look at all the things you don't like. Try and reverse that into how I would make that fit into my life. And now you've got a picture of the world that you want to live in. And so then the question becomes, what actions can I take as an individual being? What specific actions could I be doing on a regular basis that would help to manifest that in the world? And, Stephanie, you've been talking about nonviolent communication. Well, one of the things that I could see you doing is I can choose to communicate in a way that brings love into every conversation. Perhaps that is just a simple statement. So I communicate lovingly. One of the actions you take is I communicate lovingly. You see? And it really doesn't have to be a long statement. You know what it means. Other people don't need to know what it means. It only matters what it means to you. Then when you have that short little statement, I communicate lovingly, now you start looking. All right, I communicate lovingly. How can I bring love into this communication? Every time you have a communication, that's what's going to happen. And before you know it, your entire way of communicating is going to shift. Your entire way of being is going to shift.
I like engaging with this as a question too. Like, what would love look like here? What does love look like there? And I think that helps me to recognize that it's not just one thing, and it doesn't always look one particular way, because there could be a thing that we might call tough love, and then there could be a very tender, gentle love. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
And I'm a little self-conscious about the background noise. So let me know, because I can't tell how it sounds on the other end. It's not tremendously distracting for me. So please let me know if it's an issue. What?
Well, it's we're going to have to resolve it later, but let's
Yeah.
just finish this
Okay.
today's
So
conversation.
I have a question for everyone listening and watching. I'm wondering, what is your takeaway from this conversation today? What are you seeing? What are you noticing about purpose, or anything else that you'd like to share? So I invite you to leave a little comment in the chat.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from people too. I think we have covered a lot, and we've offered some suggestions and some viewpoints. I think finding your purpose really has to come through the essence of who you are and what really gets you excited about life. And once you have that purpose, even if it isn't, articulated in as fine and concise a way as you would like, once you have it, it's going to make the rest of your life so much easier, because all your daily choices will start to become more natural, more automatic. You're going to be doing things to be in alignment with that purpose. That's really what we're talking about here. And remember, the title of this was How to Find Your Purpose Without Losing Yourself. And that's really the key. If you do the things that Stephanie and I have been talking about, not only are you going to find your purpose, but you're going to get a deeper sense and a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation for who you really are. And that's what matters the most.
I would say also that the key to finding your purpose and exploring this is through inspiration, curiosity, excitement. It's what lights you up.
Yeah.
It's always in that. That's the direction, and allowing it to reveal itself to you by just gently moving in that direction and exploring, because it's not in a thing. It's in what's moving from within you, and it's always with you. Sometimes we just get a little confused or have some thinking about it that clouds it for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my invitation to everyone would be, if you don't absolutely know, have a clear sense of your purpose, first of all, don't make yourself wrong about it. Okay. That's the last thing you want to do. Just simply trust that if you open yourself to the truth of who you really are, the purpose will reveal itself to you. And in its process, we can offer you these facilitative techniques to help you perhaps answer the question more clearly through some of the things that Stephanie suggested and that I've suggested, the things that inspire you, excite you, light you up. I think that's a great phrase. Those are your little triggers to keep your eye on, things that you can watch for, the things that, tingle all over when you get excited. And that is that's your true essence saying, oh yeah, that's me right there. And you can feel that little dance going on, look at that. So that's what I want to offer everybody. And I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. You are going to receive an email within the next 3 or 4 hours about this, and they're going to ask you for some feedback. And my request is that you just be honest and truthful and give us some feedback about the episode. Oh, Virginia just posted. I want to just comment on this. She said, you have covered a lot. I really like how you are bringing it back to helping folks ask themselves questions that open their perspective on what purpose is and how to identify it for themselves. Yeah, that's really what we're all about here. I don't like to tell anybody anything. I mean, even as a coach, unless I'm specifically asked for advice, I never give it. I simply ask my clients questions that hopefully help them come to their own answers. And I know Stephanie does the same thing. And then also give people a sense of what purpose really is and what it is, and that it is an evolving concept, removing self-judgment as one of the big keys. Yay! Well, thank you for that, Virginia. Appreciate your input. And Stephanie, do you have anything else you want to say before we close it out?
Yeah, this is one of my very favorite conversations So if you're interested in engaging and exploring more of what your purpose might look like in one or another area of your life, reach out to me. If you feel drawn, reach out to David. It's obviously one of his favorite conversations as well. And thank you so much for joining. If you have other questions, let us know.
Yeah. And just I wanted to finish my last comment about when you get that email about feedback, please give us some feedback. Your reviews really do help us to spread the word. And of course, if you feel inclined to give us a 4 or 5-star review, that would be awesome. But I also want you to be totally honest and truthful, whatever is true for you. So with that all said, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us. We will be back again the second Tuesday of next month. And our topic then will be about integrity. So we'll find out more about that and see what that's all about. So bye-bye for now.
Have a wonderful day.